Today we'll look at rectangle, rhombus, and squares. A rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides. A rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. A square is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. The diagonals are perpendicular for a rhombus. The diagonals also bisect a pair of opposite angles. Examples are given with the corollary and the theorems in this lesson. For a rectangle, the diagonals are congruent. Going back for just a second, keep in mind that a square is also a rhombus and a rectangle. So it includes all of the properties of a rectangle and a rhombus, as it shows here. We're deciding if the statement is always or sometimes true. So given a rectangle, labeling it A, B, C, D, AB is equal to BC, and the second one is AB is equal to CD. Okay, the one we know obviously is true is that the opposite sides are congruent. That's always the case because it's also a parallelogram, and so opposite sides are congruent. Because it is also a parallelogram. If the two sides were to be the same length, so if BC and AB were the same, it would have to look more like this. In which case it would have to also be a square. So the second one is always true. The first one is sometimes true. In this case it would then also be a square. Our next example is classify the special quadrilateral. Explain your reasoning. So we're showing that the opposite sides are parallel. Also, we're showing that we have congruent sides and that the two sides are the same. So this would have to be a rhombus. So we have the sides are congruent. And parallel. In our next example, we're finding the measure of angle ABC and the measure of angle ACB in the rhombus. So the measure of angle ABC, we're given that a piece of this is 61 degrees. That would make the total of this angle 61 doubled, so 122 degrees. To get the angle next to it, we take 180, because the consecutive angles are supplementary, minus 122. And that angle would be 58 degrees. So ABC's measure is 58 degrees. ACB, since we know it's a parallelogram, and we also know that it is a rhombus, the diagonals are going to bisect the opposite angles. So angle ACB is also 61 degrees. Suppose you measure one angle of the window opening and its measure is 90 degrees. Can you conclude the shape is a rectangle? So if we conclude this is a right angle, consecutive angles are supplementary, so this is a right angle. Opposite angles are congruent. So the ones across from each other are also right angles. So if we have all right angles, and opposite sides are congruent, so that would be a yes. In the rectangle, AC equals 7x minus 15 and BD equals 2x plus 25. Find the lengths of the diagonals of ABCD. Since we know it's a rectangle, we know that the diagonals are congruent, so we set the two expressions equal to each other, solve for x. I'll bring the 2x to the left side, regroup. 5x minus 15 equals 25. Add 15 to the right side. 5x equals 40. Divide by 5. X equals 8. If x equals 8, we can substitute into either one of the two expressions to get the length. So 2 times 8 plus 25 is 16 plus 25, which equals 41. So the diagonal lengths are 41. In our last example, we're deciding what the shape is, if it's a rectangle, rhombus, or a square. We'll make an XY axis on our graph. We'll plot the points at -2, +3, 2, 2, 1, -2, and -3, -1. We'll connect our points with line segments. The one thing we need to double check are, it appears that the sides are all the same length. If we look at the distance, they all have the same slope as well. We need to check to see if they're right angles. So we need to see if the slopes are opposite reciprocals. So on the first one, for our slope, we're going up 1 unit, and to the left 4 units. On this one, we're going to the left 1 and down 4 units. So the slope of it's rise over 1. So the slope from this one is up 1 and left 4. So that'd be 1 over -4, or -1/4. On the other one, we're going left 1 and then down 4. Or actually, we'll go up 4 and to the right 1. We'll do it that way. So it'll be rise over run, so 4 over 1. So they are opposite reciprocals, which means that this is a right angle. So since they're right angles, it is a square, which also makes it a rhombus, rectangle, parallelogram. Its most accurate name would be a square.